Welcome to LOA Today. I'm Walt Jason.
With me today is life coach and LOA teacher Joel Elston.
This is your daily dose of happy. We are so happy you decided to join us today.
I sneezed right in time for the opening.
Well, bless you.
Yeah, I was trying to time it. I'm like, let's go.
It was good. Yeah, I thought you did that really, really well. Yeah.
No problem. How are you, buddy?
I'm all right. How are you doing there, Joel?
Things are really good. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. And we have a really fun topic today. This is a topic, honestly, that I have been experiencing directly a lot over the last month or so. People using the phrase that's in the title of today's talk. I don't mean to judge anyone, and then of course they spend the next 5 minutes judging somebody. And it strikes me as really, I usually smile whenever I hear somebody say that because I know what's coming, right? I don't necessarily know what the content is, but I know that, there's going to be a little judgment going on here, and then they're going to try to slip it past me. Maybe you won't notice that I'm judging somebody here.
Sure.
I think that this is a really interesting human quirk. I mean, there are a lot of people who have this quirk. So I figured that would make an interesting conversational piece. So that's kind of how this whole thing got started. I mean, do you run into this with your clients? I mean, because you're with your clients all day.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's sort of like, no offense intended as they begin to offend you. It's almost,
right.
That's, same theory, but the judging, somehow we have it obviously has a negative connotation. I don't mean to judge, but as humans, we judge. It's necessary. Yeah. It is, you walk into an environment, you're judging the environment. I thought of this example one time, and as soon as I saw the topic, I knew I'd share it, so I'd start off with you. I think you know me pretty well. I'm sort of not a racist person. I don't think in negative terms generally. So one night I was driving down from where I was living in South Carolina to Florida, and I was by myself. My children weren't with me, and I often will drive from 10 p.m. until the next morning. I like driving at night by myself.
Oh, okay.
So you can do 100 miles an hour. It's fun. There's nobody in your way. You have fun. And I'll just stop in the rest areas and go. So 2:30 in the morning in the middle of nowhere rest area, I pull up to a rest area, get out, and I go into the restroom. Again, I'm a relatively big guy. I'm not really scared of people in general. Well, immediately within 3 minutes of me getting in there, 5 guys come in, pretty rough looking guys. And I start thinking, okay, here we go. I judged the situation, and it was defensive. I was prepared. I didn't know what was about to happen, but it felt instantly. There's 5 guys, rough looking guys, and I'm in there by myself at 2:30 in the morning. There's nobody for miles around, and they believe they're about to get my money. And I'm mentally preparing, what's that going to look like and all that. I get done using the urinal, go wash my hands. They're there, walk by, say, how you guys doing? Very polite, say, good evening, how are you? Went and got in my car and left with no incident at all. But my alert system went up because I found myself in a situation where if they were bad guys, I would have had a real problem. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense. I get it.
So it's judging, but it's also protective. So when you walk in, you meet somebody, there is a tendency. You need to evaluate. Is it evaluation or is it judging? Now, I do know there's a concept of judging that we're talking about here, but the idea in general, human nature is to assess everything. You walk into a restaurant, you're assessing it, you're judging it, you're looking at it, you're comparing to what you've seen before, and stuff that we don't know or can't identify. Not only are we judging, we're also filling in the blank with historical stuff just to make it make sense to us.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot to that. And, so when you hear people say, well, I'm not judging, but yes, of course, they're about to judge. But the idea that we've made that something that I don't know how you don't assess or judge. Now, if you're judging personalities and, racist, and I'm not talking about all that stuff. I'm talking about in general, I don't know anybody that you don't meet and think, this is, I have a profile of this person mentally just based on all the people I've met all those years. It's not a bad thing. It's just automatically done. It's sort of fill in the blank.
You're touching on a point that I actually have had conversations with other people here on the show over time. And I came to my own definitional scheme, if you will, to help me differentiate. So I differentiate between judging and discerning. And for me, the difference is that discernment is judging without the no attached to it, without the naughty attached to it, without the you shouldn't be doing this attached to it, without the moralism or the ethical side of it and so forth. It's just, oh, that's green and that's blue. That's discerning. Whereas, oh, that's that green stuff. That's judging.
Right. Yeah. And, as human beings, we have part of our survival mechanism requires some discernment and judging at times, I guess. And it's such a close walk in that, the idea that I have one client mentioned this the other day. She's very attractive. She's an Instagram model. She's, relatively famous, and, they she also has an advanced degree. She's very smart, but people look at her and, she's an Instagram model. They sort of laugh at her, and it's the whole judgment of who she is based on factors that aren't true. She's beautiful. She has a big following on Instagram. A lot of people assume she has sex with men for money. She does not. But a judgment takes place based on how she looks and what she does. And they don't realize that she is going to, she has an advanced degree. She could be working in a different field. She may one day, but right now, she's doing real well doing what she does. But again, there's a judgment attached to that, right, without knowing all the information.
Yes. That's the key element right there. Not knowing all the information.
Yes.
Right. Because it creates a canvas for us to, we've drawn a blank. We don't really know what goes in there. So we'll just invent something because we're storytellers. We're all storytellers, right?
Yes.
And the art of storytelling is filling in the gaps. It's painting a picture with words.
Well,
so that's what we do.
Exactly. Here's an exercise to sort of understand this. So imagine that you're sitting at home tonight about 10 o'clock and you hear this unusual noise. It's sort of a thump or a crack, and it's unusually loud, maybe a vibration you felt. Your brain immediately, its first job is to figure out what that is.
Right.
It wants to assess. It wants to, evaluate. It wants to, okay, that came from this direction. There was blah, blah, blah. Something happened to my house. Did something happen nearby? Was there a shot, some fire? So you'll go through, and this happens instantly in the subconscious brain. So judging or discernment, all this is a sort of a process of the subconscious brain almost automatically. You almost can't help it. Yeah. It just immediately happens. And I try to, one of my friends is a professor at Harvard, and he is, he's the funniest guy in the world, and he's Asian. So he's an Asian Harvard professor.
Okay.
So, what do you just, me describing him to you, you automatically can fill in the blanks. He laughingly says, "Yes, Joel, I drive a Honda Accord." He said, "Yes, we have rice at every meal. Yes, and he goes through the checklist. He's very conservative, and not in a, just not outrageous.
Right.
He's all about the science. He's all about that. And just, the idea of him, having a wild time is maybe having a bite of his wife's dessert. It's just a very, and he literally, when you look at him, you will know, he said, we've talked about this exact subject. And he said, I am the poster child for what you think when you look at me. It's, he said in first grade, he once got they used ones, twos, and threes when he was in first grade. Mm-hmm. And one being great, three being the least. And he one time got a 2, and he's never gotten over it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was handwriting with the class or the subject.
Uh-huh.
And he said, that just changed my life. And I go, wow. Yeah. And again, great guy, hilarious, dear friend. But you would look at him and you could assess it wouldn't go far. You wouldn't even have, it doesn't go, anything you're thinking is actually true with him. Perfectly. And so, just even to the car he drives, it's just, well, of course it's Honda Accord. It's just, they're very efficient. They don't break. I'll keep one for 3 years and then get a new one. Of course you do.
I love this. This is great.
Yeah. So,
it
takes place
specifically on that persona that you're painting, the male Asian American. There are stereotypes associated with that. I've actually explored them here on the program. I've had guests on the program telling me details about what it is like to grow up as an Asian American male, and I've gotten my stereotypes from that because, okay, they're painting it for me, so it must be true for all who are Asian American, right? And of course it isn't, but nevertheless, it's easy to fall into that.
Well, and that's the thing. So, I really, more than anything is, like with everything's perspective based in my world, as you know. So judging, itself is perspective based. Is it a discernment? Is it making a judgment? Is a situation safe to go in?
Mm.
I'm in a new town one night. I don't have any idea where I'm at, sort of the downtown area, and I need to get some money to tip the hotel people. And I'm looking around going, do I need to go to this ATM? I'm judging the area. I'm assessing the area for safety.
Sure.
It's like, okay, and people say, well, what are you looking at to decide? And I said, well, is there a bunch of people around? I don't know. Is it safe? You don't want to go. There are neighborhoods that it's not wise to go to the ATM at 2 a.m.
Right.
Yeah. And so much of it, again, with today's society, we're always trying to, you shouldn't judge. Well, you sort of, it's just a prerequisite on some level. It's a safety factor going on. Now, what you do with that is a whole different topic. And that's where
right.
we're sort of looking at the difference. But, it's an act that takes place that doesn't have your conscious control. You're always assessing every scenario. I'm looking at the traffic, and I come into work and I go down the same road every day. I have an option of getting off and getting on interstate to complete the rest of my drive, or I go over that and go the back way, which is a little longer, but it's never clogged. So if I'm driving over, I immediately look at 95 over the overpass, and if it's backed up, I go the back way.
Mm-hmm.
I make and probably one day a week it's backed up. So
right.
I'll make and save time. I go the back way to do that. I assess the situation based on. I don't want to. One of my, as you can imagine, my pet peeves is being stuck in traffic. I don't do well with that.
Yeah, I can get that, especially based on a conversation we had before we got started. I totally would get that. Yes.
Yes. So it's like, okay, I did not schedule this traffic jam. Sorry.
Yes, right.
But I just, I love that, I love how our brain works. I love how the subconscious brain works, but I also am aware that you can't shut some of this off. Now, the intent of it, the purpose of it, it can really get to a very negative place. So there is that judging, based on everything bad, but not based on that is we are judgers in that way of being protective.
It's a really valid point and an important one. I was in my mind kind of zeroing in, focusing in on the specific phrase and when we use it. I don't mean to judge anyone, but, and as I was focusing in, I was saying to myself, well, we tend to set that up as a preface to our commentary, whoever we're commenting about, because in this case, it's about somebody, and I don't mean to judge anyone. And in the process, what we're recognizing is we could be saying something that somebody else would see as a slight against whoever it is we're talking about.
Right.
And what we're trying to say is, I don't mean to slight them.
Right. Well, right now you have, so many situations where everybody is so concerned about being offended or saying the right thing. And you have a lot of that going on. So it's even more difficult right now how do you make statements like that? Not to, it probably shouldn't be making any of the statements at all, but at least in your brain, you're aware, like I said earlier, if you have to tell somebody, I'm no offense intended, but I'm about to offend you. It's, you probably don't need to make the statement. It's not a healthy thing. I don't mean to judge is probably followed by whatever you're about to judge is probably not, the safest thing to say again in today's world. But as far
Probably
as
not, no.
yeah, probably the act of doing it or the act of, it's just hard to stop the brain from making, I'll bring these one day. We'll do this on the air, but I have these ink blots and, I have two things I love to do. I don't use ink blots the normal way. But I like to fill up an ink blot and you blurt out immediately, whatever you think it is, whatever, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And then I have these pictures of these are just random pictures of people in various scenarios. And I'll hold the picture up and I go, Walt, please explain to me, like, here's one I love. There's this lady that's overlooking this field. It looks like there's crops out there. Mm-hmm. And she's, all you see her from the back. She's got a dress on. It looks like an old farm from the 1800s. And she's looking out over the crop. The sky's gray. You can't really tell, where it's at, but it's gray, looks rainy, sort of dark. And I'll ask people, what is she doing? And what is she, and it's amazing what people answer. I mean, it's like, well, one lady said, well, she lost her son and she's just trying to cope with that. Well, this lady had lost her son and so she just immediately filled in the blank. That's what it looked like. The other lady's like, oh, she's just observing a thunderstorm off in the distance. It's just, but everybody had an opinion of what she was doing. And it was all based on their internal belief system and background. I love doing those things because it helps you realize you're going to see things differently. Yeah. You're going to see them differently. And you're wanting to make sense. And that's where judgment does come in sometimes.
That's a really great point. I love the exercise too. I mean, I've seen people do similar things on social media. What is this? Yeah. Give us the headline of what this scene is actually saying, right?
Yes. Well, you'll always, you'll always have somebody, on no matter what you do, there's always going to be somebody they're going to be either triggered by or reminding them of something. So they're going to see it through the lens of their trauma or their excitement or whatever it was. And they're going to, you can't really ever predict. It's just a fascinating exercise more than anything to get people to realize we just have this going on in our brain. And there's a reason for it, but also when you can learn to sort of control that narrative a lot of times and maybe not jump to the conclusion because I don't know what's going on. I want to know what's going on. But I don't know what's going on. Let's see what's going on. Let's fill in the blank differently. But it's a hard thing you can't defeat the subconscious brain. It's going to deliver the message and, you're like, oh crap. There it is.
Yeah, there's a certain degree of honesty that comes through whether you want to or not.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And that's what I love, about the, children a lot of times because children don't have that filter. And so they immediately will just say the most unbelievably, embarrassing thing. It's not really embarrassing. They're just stating truth. They're just, it's like, so, one of my friends a long time ago, his son, he's grown now. He's a great kid, great young man. But we were all at the movies many years ago. We laugh about this all the time. So there's this lady comes in, she's a big lady and she was, walking up and, she was at a concession stand. She bought a lot of food. And so as she was walking by, she goes, oh, my back hurts so bad. And she goes, I don't know what the problem is. And it wasn't our person. She just happened to be walking by and the kid goes, maybe because it's your fat. and she goes, excuse me? And he goes, well, I think you're fat because you eat all that food. And he wasn't being mean. He really, he thought she literally wanted an answer to why her back hurt, and pretty obvious to him. Well, you're fat, and wow, you got like this big thing of popcorn and 3 candy bars. You're probably, and again, not funny to the people that's going through, but it's just it's a blunt judgment that was pre-programmed. It just made complete sense to him.
Right.
And he had no social filter.
That's funny. That's really funny.
Yeah. So but it does. We were talking before the show about, just how it can affect other areas. And, we as humans always, I say this, I think every week, we view the world through our lens that we developed through what we went through. And when you have scenarios come up that you're expecting, or you have scenarios come up that happened historically, and they keep coming up, it's almost like, well, I'm sort of shocked that hadn't happened yet. And, the idea that the law of attraction comes into play, that you literally are going to get what you believe you're going to get, and not what you want to get, what you believe you're going to get.
Yes.
And example, if you've been working on a project multiple years and various projects, and you always get to a thing where it falls apart because of that, and you're like, okay, I'm not going to think that, but that happens every time. You almost wait for it to happen, and you go, there it is.
It's like waiting for the other shoe to drop. It's there. It's going to come down at some point, and it's going to hit the floor. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a very high level of expectation.
Yeah, it's like when you go through a day, and I don't do this anymore, but I used to work running a treatment center, and you have multiple things going on in a day. I'm like, I would like to get through a day without there being some piece of drama from my staff in particular. And I've had days where you made it at 3:00 going, we might make it. Because the day ends at 4, we might just make it. It's like, oh, that was so close. But again, we're filtering for things. I don't know anybody, maybe the highest guru kind of person can live where you're not doing that. But there's just this going on. We're battling subconscious program for a lot of this. And, when I think I've said, I'm not offended by anybody or anything, or even, when somebody says, one guy told me, he said, I don't mean to offend you, Joel. And then he went on to try to offend me.
Right.
And my statement to him, I go, oh, you're not that powerful. And he was like, what do you mean? I go, oh, you couldn't. I said, there's not a level, no disrespect. I'm about to disrespect you because you don't have any, you have nothing to, I'm not offended by anything you say on any level. I'm good with that. You have your beliefs. That's fine. And he goes, I'm sort of offended by that. I go, well, there you go. But when you get so comfortable with things, you just, whatever, it gets to that. So the process of judging and the process of filling in the blank, and the process of things making sense, there's a thin line between them all.
It really is. Yeah. And it's a challenge. That's one of the reasons I like this topic. Something else that occurred to me too. Whenever that phrase, I don't mean to judge anyone, but whenever that phrase comes to mind, I can also imagine a scenario where a person who's in the room responds by basically saying, well, you shouldn't be judging somebody else. What are you doing judging somebody? And then there's a little bit of a disagreement going on there. And it occurred to me that the person who responds that way is also judging. Like we have a double judging going on.
Yes. I mean, you probably have quadruple judgings happening often because
right.
When you have a room full of people, especially a room full of people that you don't necessarily know, it's just you automatically assess. You walk in, you judge. It's just how it has to be. The idea that you sort of get a feel of things. When I used to go into years ago, when I would do calls with social services for kids that were in dangerous environments, you would walk into a house and, I mean, you'd see stuff going, wow, this is, you fill in the blanks. There's not good stuff going on here. There's just not good stuff. People can't be living this way. And you want to be fair. Everybody could have a bad day, but when you have rotting garbage over there in the corner that's been there for clearly a week or two, that's not really a judgment. That's just, we can't have that. So you have all of these things. Life is full of that. We also have a time where you shouldn't judge, or you shouldn't do these things, or you shouldn't feel this way. It's sort of the pendulum right now has swung so far that unless you're on the exact narrative of what should be, everything you shouldn't be able to do. It's like, does that make sense?
Yeah, I get what you're saying. And it actually brings out another point that I've been thinking about, and I wanted to bring out with you to kind of explore it further, which is the idea of, okay, well, maybe you don't mean to judge. Maybe that person is judging. Maybe this other person you're talking to is judging in a way you don't like, but why does it matter?
You're asking the wrong person, because it doesn't me.
Yeah, well, I knew that, but to me, that's the response to the current climate where, it becomes very, very uncomfortable to say anything about, judging, or even to imply a judgment or something like that, as if there was something wrong with it. And like, why are you so upset about it? What's the big deal?
What does a person's opinion, sometimes that you don't even know, their judgment of you, why does that bother? They don't have enough information to officially judge you. It doesn't work that way. But yet it does. I mean, it's so, again, it's the slippery ground, and some of my beliefs, and I've talked about that. The idea that we've become a society of easily offendable people that are always looking for ways to be offended. And judging can be one. You don't know me, why judge me? Or you think this way, or what? I had a friend one time. We're still friends. I haven't seen him in a long time, but he one time was, he had a period in his life, one of his family members had died, and he wanted to he went and got a tattoo, not the best thing, on the side of his neck, right here, big tattoo with his brother's initials on it. And I'm like, and this guy did work in like plumbing and something like that. He did well. Well, in plumbing, it doesn't really matter. I said, have you considered getting it on your shoulder? Because if you ever want to do something different, it's going to hard to be with that. It just doesn't fit other jobs. And he goes, I don't care. And I go, well, as long as you don't care, that's fine. I just wondered, the only downside of that, well, about 10 years later, when he got tired of doing plumbing, he wanted to go back to school and be a nurse. And he wasn't overtly rejected, but he would get really far in phone interviews, and when we get there in person, he just never got the job.
Yeah, I got it.
And he said, I really think that affects when I walk in. Now, that's been many more years than 10 years ago. So today's world, tattoos are a different thing. I don't think it would have that same impact, but back in the day, it really did, because it was an unusual thing to see. So, I get to the biggest answer is, I just don't care. You can judge. I'm like, judge away, swing away. It doesn't do anything. And I'm not just saying that flippantly. It doesn't resonate with me.
I don't remember what the exact quote is, but there's an Abraham Hicks quote that I love, that I actually had a bookmark of it. Unfortunately, not on this computer, so I can't go get it. But the bookmark was to remind me, this is a quote that I want to use under certain circumstances, especially if I'm dealing with somebody who's all hot under the collar because of some kind of a judge thing. And the quote essentially says, I'm definitely paraphrasing here, but it basically says, whatever someone else's opinion of you has nothing to do with you.
Yes.
It's really none of your business at all. It's all their business, and it's really not affecting you. It's only affecting them. And similarly, your opinion of somebody else isn't affecting them at all. It's only affecting you.
That is the hardest thing for some people to really understand, and it's so accurate. Someone's opinion of you is solely filtered through their opinions of themselves and what they know.
Yeah.
And it doesn't hurt me if somebody doesn't like me or they judge me. How could somebody not officially like me, not knowing me, or not without the details? Well, I don't like the way you talk. Okay, I'm good with that. That's fine. You talk too fast, or you blah, blah, blah. Stuff you believe is crazy. I'm good with all those answers. It doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, I never have intended to be for everybody. I'm not for everybody. You're not for everybody. In fact, it would be a horrible life to live if we all were just worried about making everybody happy and sort of comply. I like to be on the edge of where I'm at.
Well, there's a phrase for that. There's actually a term for that. It's a psychological term. It's called codependence. Yes.
Exactly. And that's the piece of just being able to live authentically and be able to say, yeah, I'm in control of my reality. there's nothing you can do to violate my reality because I'm in control of my reality.
That's powerful too. Because
once you really understand that, that's incredible.
Yeah. Yeah. When you've got that under your belt, a couple things happen. First of all, no one else can really hurt you anymore. Well, not with the words anyway. I mean, if the five guys sneak up on you while you're in the restroom on the highway, that could be a problem. But, other than that situation, nobody can really hurt you anymore.
Yeah.
Because the only way you can be hurt is if you say, I'm hurt by that, and decide that you're hurt by it.
Yeah. And it's a passing thing that, I don't like everybody I meet. It's not a judging thing, and maybe it is a judging thing, but I don't have a conscious thing. There are just certain energies that I don't want to be around. And people that have high anxiety, I feel for them. I really do. And I work with a lot of people with anxiety, but people that have high anxiety that don't work on it and just live that constant anxious state, they drain me. Mm. They drain me. I feel sorry for them. I want them to get help. And but I have to be aware that, I just can't be around that. And then the ultimate is negative people who are always complaining. We've talked about, always catastrophizing, or I can't get better, or I can't do. I don't have, I have very limited amount of bandwidth that I can give to that because that's my quickest drain of energy. So
I'm with you on that. Actually, I have a similar response to it. I actually dated a woman where that situation came up. We were attracted to each other. We had chemistry. Everything was great, except she had a background. I think I even mentioned this to you one time. She had a background. It was a horrific background, no doubt about it. Horrible things that happened in her family, but she was convinced that she could never get past it.
Yeah.
And well, that wasn't going to work for me. I knew because I'm too growth oriented. That was just going to end up in the long run. That was going to rub me the wrong way. It was not a relationship that could work. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with what she's feeling or what she's experiencing or how
it's just not your thing.
It doesn't work for me is all. Yeah.
Yeah. And the fact is she can never get over the stuff she can't get over only because she believes she can't get over the stuff she can't get over. That's the only reason.
Yeah.
And I can get over no matter what happens in my life because I believe I can get over no matter what happens in my life. That's the facts. And it's no more difficult than that.
But it's also interesting how different the perspective can be because her perspective was that was not a fact. That was a lie.
Yeah. And, again, in my view, her view's a lie.
And now all of a sudden, I don't mean to judge anyone.
But my point is, the truth is, I don't really care what her view is, and she's welcome. She's welcome to her belief. If there's some way she's being served because she can't get over, I don't believe there's anything we can't get over. I have, the point of our existence is to grow from whatever happens, and I've had some stuff happen, and. I'm not saying it didn't really tear me down or break me down, but I knew my job was to grow from that, to move from that, to push past that. The idea that that's just, I'm not going to be stuck in any state of disease, or disease, either one. And they're the same thing, disease or disease. But it's just, I'm not going to live in that. I'm not the victim of what happens. There is a solution to every single thing we go through, and it's my job to find it.
I love that. I love the way you stated that. There is a solution to everything we go through, and it's my job to find it. That summarizes my attitude for sure. That's exactly the way I feel about it.
I'll go further and say I think that's the point of humanity. That's why we're here on this planet, to solve these things. I really believe that. I really do. If there is a reason that we're here and that we come here, we experience things, and it's like we figure it out. It's sort of like a very fancy escape room. You know what I mean? Let's figure it out. Let's get out of this.
It's an interesting idea, and it ties into the larger topic that we've talked about a lot here on the program over the years about polarity, contrast. So we live in this world of polarity where things that we like happen, things we don't like happen. Good things happen and bad things happen. And that's just part of being in this world. That's That's what you signed up for when you bought your ticket and came here. And that's where I usually insert my joke that says, what on earth was I thinking? But nevertheless, that's what we're here for. We're here to explore and enjoy. There's the key word, to enjoy this stuff. And we do, by the way. Look how much we love drama. That's what drama is. Yeah. Drama is looking at the negative and the positive going on at the same time and interacting with each other.
This is all contrast, and it's, people say, well, who don't know my whole story, they'll say, well, nothing's ever bad happened to you, or you don't know what it's like, or I've shared this with you before. I state unequivocally, and this is my truth, so I don't need any disclaimers. This is my truth. Other than that, I cured my depression and I cured my anxiety with exercise, diet, and meditation and thought, positive law of attraction thought. I cured it. I reprogrammed the part of my brain that was anxious and depressed.
Yeah.
I did that. You'll be shocked at the number of people who are offended when I say that.
Offended? Oh, that's interesting.
Because what they're saying is, oh no, you didn't have real depression. You didn't have real anxiety, because I have real depression and anxiety. And you saying that suggests I could and I can't.
And so basically your viewpoint is perceived as a threat. We were making references earlier to threats. We assess things for threats. So they've assessed that as a threat. Yes,
because their reality has become, they are depressed and they are anxious and nothing works. Nothing works. And they're just stuck to deal with it. And anything, if I say, I'm sorry you're going through that, that must be terrible. I'm not saying that's not true for them. But if I later say, I overcame my depression and anxiety with these methods. Oh, you didn't have real depression and anxiety because you can't overcome them with that.
So this is kind of a sort of a side piece of the whole, I don't mean to judge anyone thing. It's scorekeeping.
Yes.
My score is higher than your score.
Yes. There's a model. I don't know if you've heard of the trauma score.
I have not.
Okay. There's, in psychology, there's I don't know if anybody even uses it, but there's a trauma score where there's events in your life. They'll ask questions. Have you ever had a child die? Were you ever assaulted sexually as a child? Were you, and they'll go through these things and they have a number value to what these things are. It's not scientific as much as just trying to, let's get an idea of how much trauma you have.
Okay.
So the idea that like when you got whatever that, let's say 100 is if the worst of the worst happen constantly, it's 100, right?
Okay.
And that is the ultimate of depression and anxiety and all that, the trauma that you're responding to. That's that. So, when you go through it, I took the trauma score. And so when I answer the questions, where did your parents get a divorce? Yes. Does anybody in your family have ever committed suicide? Yes, 2 of them, my father and grandfather. Have you ever experienced addiction? Have you ever lost a child? Have you? And they go through it, and my trauma score is off the charts. It's like, oh my God, you're traumatized.
What are you doing on the streets? You should be locked up in an institution.
And based on the trauma score model, yes, it's terrible. And I'm not claiming it wasn't all bad stuff. I'm just simply saying my response to it is I don't feel traumatized. I have a growth mindset. Everything that I went through made me stronger. I figured out how to get stronger from whatever happened.
And we've talked about response a lot too. You and I in particular have talked about the power of selecting response. And I'll tell you what, those conversations have had a huge impact on me in my life and my perspective of things, because just by adopting that viewpoint, I get to select my response, even if what I select is not what I would normally have felt. My normal default response might have been X and I chose Y. That choosing of Y is just incredibly powerful in a way that I never would have predicted. I never would have expected it.
And it's so powerful with the power of response, the power of, I get to choose my response to whatever happens. And, those are where we don't control many things in our life. I mean, most of the stuff going on is really out of our control. most people focus on the stuff that's out of our control. It's
Yeah.
the stuff we worry about.
Mm-hmm.
But what you don't realize, when you're in control of your perspective and you're in control of your response to things, the rest of the stuff doesn't matter because you're in charge of it all. That's the sort of the nuclear bomb of it all. You're in charge of your perspective. You're in charge of your response. So I get that. Yes, I know bad things happen. I have never been. I don't think you would ever call me somebody. I don't have my head in the sand that bad things are going on. You understand?
Nah,
right?
you're not. I don't think you'd fit that graphic. No.
Yeah. So I'm not that. Oh, everything's great. I am. There's a response to everything. There is. If I wake up in the morning, there's a solution to whatever I'm facing. Whatever it is.
There's an interesting thing about that graphic too, because now, of course, I have that image in my mind, right? The ostrich with his head in the sand, and that becomes a metaphor for, well, you're not paying attention to the real important stuff because your head's in the sand. And the thing that always struck me about the head in the sand metaphor is that it gets used by people who I would look at them and I would think, my goodness, you have your head in the sand. In other words, it's like this endless cycle of, who is really divorced from reality going, where's the divorce really going on here? And of course, it's all over the place. But,
Esther, Abraham talks about, and I forget which book, having your head in the sand is not a bad thing. Having your head in the sand, you turn off the news. There's zero value to the news. It doesn't, the idea that everything's falling. I've shared this on a show not too long ago. I don't remember which topic we were on, but I go to the gym one day, as I do every day, and apparently we had this unbelievable storm. And so I go there. I didn't know we had that unbelievable storm because I didn't know it was coming, and I slept through it. And so my workout partner, friend, he's not. We don't really work out together, but he's a really nice guy. And he said, man, I'm so exhausted. I couldn't sleep. I watched the news, and that was a really bad storm last night. And I go, did it rain? And he goes, we had like 60-mile-an-hour winds. There was tornadoes and all that. I said, I said, oh, okay. He said, I just sat up all night waiting to see. And I was like, I didn't know it was going to rain. I didn't. And I never knew we had a storm. I didn't know that.
It's so funny how the human mind works, especially that's what I might call an emergency situation. Something has emerged as this is where the imminent threat is, right? He saw an imminent threat in the 60-mile-per-hour winds in the storm. And it's amazing how those threats appear in our lives and how we respond to them. There's a story that I think I've told you about. This is one of the stories that I've told whenever I want to tell people this is how I know law of attraction is real because I was able to manifest something you shouldn't be able to manifest. And in this case, it was a change in weather. This was when I lived in Virginia. When my now ex-wife and I were living in Virginia, there was a storm that was coming through. It was coming directly at our house. You know how you can go into a weather map, you can actually see where the storm is going. You can see there right, and it was coming literally. I mean, I could go down to our street and I could see exactly it was coming right at our house. And it was one of these microbursts. So kind of like, not quite a tornado, not quite a hurricane, but, high force winds that can do serious damage, that sort of thing. So I saw that it was coming and it was about 3 minutes away. And so I said to Louise, we got to do our thing with the weather. She says, why? What do you mean? I said, well, there's this thing coming at us. It's a microburst and we got to kind of, divert it away so that it doesn't cause damage to us. And so we did our thing, and me being really stupid, I went outside because I wanted to see what happened. So I go outside and I'm looking up at the sky and I see the storm coming at me, and there's like this band of blue right above the house. And there's this massive storm on this side and a massive storm on that side. And it's like, it's going around the property, right? And it went on its way and we were fine. The next day we go out, looking at the neighborhood, 3 houses to the right on the street, 3 houses to the left, everything was fine. Beyond that, it was like a bomb had gone off.
Wow.
I mean, branches, limbs down, trees down, all over the place, wires down. I mean, and we still had our power. Other people on the street didn't even have their power. It was amazing. It was an absolutely incredible situation. But I kept thinking about that over and over again. Louise and I changed our perspective. We actually got a different result from what everybody else was experiencing. And I'll bet you we thought about what happened completely differently from the way other people thought about it.
Well, you hit on the idea that when a hurricane's coming or whatever, people turn on the Weather Channel and they just focus nonstop watching the loop and is there any movement, and they're doing that, and the hurricane's going to hit where the hurricane's going to hit, you know what I mean? But yet you're suffering the hit of the hurricane by anticipation, when that happens, the idea in my world, and I know this sounds overly simplistic, and I really do believe this. Tomorrow morning, I'm going to either wake up or not wake up.
I love that. Yeah.
And so I'm going to go full blast tomorrow. I'm planning on waking up, but if I don't have to do this, obviously. But really, that's all you got to do. All these other things are sideshows. Could there be a storm come through tonight? There could be. But all of that, I don't put any energy toward any of that stuff. And the idea that you focus on what we can focus on, control what we control, put all your energy toward that, and that's where the excitement is, because I love to control the things I can control. I'm good at that, and my stuff is always positive based. I'm controlling. I'm healthy. I'm in the gym every day. I eat right for the most part. Every now and then I'll take a little detour, but for the most part, I eat well.
Just keep the Nutella away, right?
Oh yeah. When I go on vacation, it's a Nutella fest, by the way.
I see, yes.
Yeah, that's the only time I'll eat it. And when we were in Florida a few weeks ago, we got the big, gigantic jar of Nutella. And we tried it on everything. And I told you this during the Nutella show.
Yeah.
I challenge you to find any food product that Nutella doesn't make better. It doesn't. Have you ever thought of Nutella crusted salmon?
I had not, and you just put an image in my mind that I'm not sure I want, but okay.
It is shockingly good.
Some chef in New Orleans is going to try to mix that one up and see if he can sell it to his clients.
But this is the sort of where we're going. I mean, I love the concept of the whole where we're talking about with the topic of the show. But as you get deeper into the perspective of all this and where, what our brain is doing, I like to know why things happen. You know what I mean? Why are our bodies responding a certain way? I don't get stuck on, I don't like that. I want to know why. Anxiety has a place, and stress, it has a place. There's a reason. It's put there for a reason. Depression was put there for a reason. Those reasons might not necessarily be relevant in today's world, but there was a time when you needed to be alert. You needed to be, you really needed to be on your toes. You don't want to be caught out there with those dinosaurs chasing you around, kind of thing. But today's world, a lot of those things don't serve us. So not allowing, but I also don't mind some positive stress too. Like we've talked about, I don't mind deadlines. I like deadlines. I like to get stuff done. There's an excitement having a deadline. I don't mind that. So everything's perspective based. You get to choose that.
You touched on one of my favorite subtopics, the idea of, is it a good idea to set a deadline? You just made the argument in favor. For me, I tend to look at the other side like, no, I don't want to set a deadline because all I'm going to do is just drive myself crazy about the deadline. But it just goes to show you can have two completely different opinions, two completely different perspectives on whether or not a deadline is value, and both are equally valuable. They're both equally useful.
Yeah. Well, to me, a deadline is I do better, I'm not good at implementing my own deadlines. I don't really do well with that. I get stuff done when I get it done. But when someone, if I have, for example, I have a client that is in the middle of a big thing right now, and I have to have this letter that I have to write. And it's, when I write a letter, this is a letter that's going to be in court. So I have to write it. I have to run it by the attorney. I have to do that. So, I have court in 2 days, and I have to have that letter to the attorney within 30 minutes. You know what I'm saying? Right. There's that kind of thing is good for me. I thrive with that. I jump in, I do it. I'm good with that. Artificial deadlines for the sake of deadlines never treat me well. If I have a court date at 8:30 a.m. on Thursday morning, and an attorney has to review and approve the letter, tomorrow morning and get it back, blah, blah, blah. That's a deadline that my clients need me to adhere to. And it's important.
And I totally get that one. I actually don't even think of that as a deadline. I just think of it as a necessity, but I totally get
necessity. Yes. Yeah. But I also don't believe in artificial deadlines because I never adhere to those.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I tend to be resistant to them, to be honest.
Yeah. Well,
those artificial ones that we put in there. If I just put this deadline in, I will be more efficient. That's a killer. For me, that's going to just end the whole process.
Well, Elon Musk, made a statement, and I've heard him say this. He said, the engineers in some of his projects, they would say, well, you have 30. They were like, we need 30 days to get this done. He goes, you got 5. And they're like, we can't do it in 5 days. If you can do it in 30, you can do it in 5. Just challenging because you build in time a lot of times. I'm not saying I agree with Elon Musk. I'm just simply saying that we tend to meet the deadline, but the deadline can be artificial. It also slows us down. Deadlines are not usually efficient because you're going to wait up to the deadline to get it done. There's nothing like college students waiting for that last night before the project's due.
Very true. Yes. Yeah. I think they're called all-nighters for a reason.
Yes. A little Adderall, a little coffee, and
that's right.
Let's get this knocked out.
And of course, that's the way that ends up at the end. You end up just knocked out because all of a sudden you fell asleep on the whole thing.
Yeah. It's that. But the exciting piece to me in all the topics we talk about is, and I'm glad this sort of popped in tonight's talk, the understanding where your power is controls all of every show topic we ever have had boils down to knowing where your power exists, knowing your perspective. That's where the answer is going to be. Everything's perspective based.
That's really true.
So, yeah.
That's really true. Ultimately, every topic we've ever addressed has at some point gotten down to what do you feel inside? What is your internal connection saying to you?
Yes, exactly. And that's the piece that I've just been fascinated with, is sort of the quantum theory in my mind of the law of attraction. It's just you're going to come up with the same answer because perspective controls it all. Good day, bad day, opportunity. I've had people. You've heard me give many examples. Coach many years ago I was working with lost his job at the NFL level. And he was offensive coordinator, lost his job, had a bad week, and somebody has to go, so he went. And high paying job, they paid him his contract and all that, but he's like, oh, I'll never, I said, this is propelling you into something new. This is propelling you into something new. Well, it turns out the head coach that sort of threw him under the bus, it didn't get any better when that guy was gone. So he ended up getting the job that the guy fired him from, and did real well. So it wasn't, sometimes being fired is a positive thing because it's going to lead to that next thing. I always believe fired is a good thing because it leads to new stuff. But it's just this idea that we have that bias or that belief that all of these things, there are good and bad. And when you really realize your response dictates what all this is, no matter what it is. There's bad things that happen. But there's a response somewhere in there, and your job is to find that response and put your energy and effort toward that response.
Yeah, I like that. Also, it reminds me of something else too, which is that for myself, and I'm not speaking for anyone else here, this is just how I think, how I operate. I found that by changing the way I talk about these things to myself, I have a better experience with them. Instead of talking about something as being good or bad or right or wrong, I talk about it in terms of whether I like it or I don't like it. Whether I prefer it or don't prefer it. And just by changing the language in that way, first of all, I get all the moralism out of there. That always messes things up. But secondly, it just has a different feeling to it. The experience, just by applying a different word, a different set of words, just feels very, very different. It's almost like it removed all of the dross, all the extraneous stuff that it shouldn't be a part of the equation, and just helps you to really focus in and narrow down to the one essential thing that really is important to you in whatever the situation is.
I like that. And also the idea that we have we have so much more power than we realize when you understand where our power exists. And that's the piece where the law of attraction and responds to that. If people that believe that everything's lost or I can't get better or all these things, they're absolutely right. They really are.
Yeah.
And that's the piece. And that comes across as like, oh, well, you're just rolling your eyes and saying that. No, I really believe I feel sorry for them, I guess, because they don't understand it differently, but they will never get over that stuff. Never. Only because they believe they never will. That's just,
right.
It sounds so, I'm not being judgy, but it really is just understanding it's that simple. There is nothing that we can't overcome when you're in control of the things you know you're in control of. And you can't maybe get an exact scenario back, but I'm all about second chances. I'm all about 10th chances. I'm all about just keep going, grinding. I love those things. All those things are positive terms to me. Struggle, I've talked about that word many times.
Yeah, we had a good conversation about that.
Yeah, struggle to me is one of the most positive things. Young people that don't know how to struggle, and there's a lot of those in today's society. Wow, it's hard because life has struggle. You can't, but when your perspective of struggle determines what it is.
There's one other piece I want to bring into this in the last few minutes that we have. We'll probably go over as we normally do, but that's okay. But this actually came up yesterday, and Anne Marie and I were doing the show with a guest, and when this came up, we were both marveling. I was particularly marveling at, wow, how did we avoid talking about this for all these years on the show? Because we talk a lot about focus. We talk a lot about perspective. That's been an ongoing theme for the longest time. But the guest that was on the show yesterday made a really interesting observation, which is that when we focus on something, we tend to magnify it. We make it bigger in our observation. I thought to myself, why don't we ever explore that? I mean, that's like critically important. That's really what we're talking about right here. The more that we focus in on a belief, the more we make it true because we magnify it and we make it bigger and bigger and bigger in our own experience. And so therefore it becomes bigger and bigger in our experience.
Thoughts have energy. There's energy to thoughts and beliefs. And when you put your focus on thoughts or beliefs, you are energizing those. And the more you focus, the more you're energizing them. Either direction.
Yeah.
Again, neither good nor bad. I don't know if you have felt this, and I've had a couple people comment on this, and I on some level may have noticed this too. The last month seems to be a real high level of anxiety. I'm meeting a lot of clients with anxiety. There feels like there's an unease. You know what I'm saying? The traffic, people are angry driving. It's just, and I don't know how to measure that. I'm oblivious to all this stuff, but I'm hearing so many people ask me, do I notice a difference? Well, I normally don't notice a difference, but now people are asking me, I am noticing a difference. Now, Is it different? But I'm now filtering for it. So it is. So my focus is on that, and I'm seeing more of it.
Yeah. And the factor that really caught my attention was the magnifying. I love the use of the word magnify in that context, because that really does describe beautifully what happens. It gets bigger. It actually hasn't changed size at all, but our perception of it is that the more that we pay attention, it gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and endlessly. It does never stop.
Imagine, and here's what I envision that when I talk about that. Imagine a connection, energy connection to whatever you're focusing on. The more you're focusing on it, you're sending energy, and it's just growing. It's absorbing that energy and becoming bigger and bigger and stronger and more powerful. Because you're giving it attention. There's stuff you don't give attention to doesn't grow. It doesn't change. It doesn't do it.
Right.
But when you get, if you look at something and you never notice something in the house, it's like, then you notice something in your house you perceive there's a flaw. Well, now your attention is on that and you're focused on the flaw. It's like, I got to get this fixed. It's been that way for years, but it didn't matter now. But now you're focused on it. Let's go do that.
Yes.
That's what a terrible way to live, where you're constantly stuck on what is that, in that case, it's a problem type thing. But when your energy is going to it, the focus increases, the lens, the lens becomes more intense and it expands.
Yeah. Yeah. That's, we talked about earlier in the show here, we talked about the power of choosing our response. That's where the power of choosing response is evident.
Yes.
That's where you find out it really is powerful, because it takes this scenario in which we built this thing up by giving it a whole bunch of attention, and it's gotten stronger and more powerful and more magnified and bigger and bigger and bigger. And then we change our response, and it changes. The experience changes. The way we think about it changes. The way we feel about it changes. It actually can change to the point where it goes away and somebody else says, was there something here? I know. I could have sworn there was something here a moment ago.
Yes, exactly. And that's the beauty of it. When you figure out these tools, it becomes, it's a lot of freedom involved with that, a lot of power involved with that. And, you don't walk around, being so easily, manipulated by the energy. What other people's focusing on is not my focus. And I can, if I'm not focusing on no matter how they are, it's growing for them. It's more powerful for them. It's expanding for them, but it's not for me. Yeah.
Yeah. Which makes the life of a life coach or of a therapist really interesting.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You have no idea.
You have no idea.
Yeah. I love about my job because every now and then something comes along that, ooh, wow, I didn't expect that. Yeah. I've seen everything. And then you think, oh, no, there's one more thing I didn't see. Yeah. It's a great job. Even though one of the things that, I've noticed my focus has been a lot more on, I've always told them I'm not going to retire. I'm going to just keep working. Yeah. But I am thinking more about, slowing down the frenetic pace of my practice and, doing more virtual stuff. And, I've begun that process of exploring that.
Oh, okay.
I'm liking that idea because while I do love it, I'm like, okay, this is a pretty frenetic pace and I don't need to keep this up forever.
All right, good. Well, one more example of how we get to decide what our response is going to be. You decide.
Absolutely.
You've had this response. Maybe I'm going to change the response. Okay.
Well, that's the beauty of it. You get to change. The response can change. It adapts to where you're at. It's like, I don't necessarily have to do that. I mean, I like to do it. And as long as I like to, I'm going to keep doing it. But if there's ever a day of like, okay, that's a long, I tend to have a few days that things just get, I don't know how it falls, but I'll end up somebody like 8 or 9 appointments scheduled in a row. That's a lot.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. And, I'm like, okay, I'm going to quit doing the 8 in the day, the 9 in the day. That's a lot.
A little excessive. Okay.
Yeah, a little excessive. Now, before I used to eat it up. So nothing's changed except my perspective of what I want. I still love my job. I just, I need to space them out a little bit.
Yeah. Good policy. I like that. Great way to wind this up too, because, when we started the topic, I don't mean to judge anyone, but I mean, I knew we were going to go in about 500 different directions, which we did do, but I always wonder how we're going to tie it together at the end, and you just tie it together beautifully. So thank you for that. That was good.
You're welcome. Always good to see you, my friend.
Good to see you too. Thank you to our podcast listeners everywhere. We'll see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.